my basement here in Colorado once again. I'll be doing lecture number 7 today. You can tell if I think a subject's important if I'm doing it really early in the lectures. So this is an important lecture, at least from my perspective, as we move forward in understanding God's Word, as we get creation order, as we understand how God made things, or in what progress God made things through his creation to create his ultimate plan. His ultimate creation is this physical. I know we always think heaven is the ultimate goal, but that is because sin is a part of our this realm that we live in, the physical realm. But when you take sin out of this realm, I promise you, this is God's ultimate creation, is the physical realm. This is what he had planned all along. And let us look at creation order again, lecture 7. I'm going to do many lectures, at least referring to creation. There are many well-produced CDs on creation that I'll be sending to be shown as part of these lectures. At some point, they're going to be available. The Christian biblical view of creation is far different from the world's view that is more or less magic over millions and billions of years. The frog to man beliefs of evolution stands in complete contrast to what the Bible teaches in the first books, in the first chapters of the Old Testament. A creation of only a few days is far different from natural forces over billions of years. That each kind was created to be far different from evolution's beliefs that we are all somehow linked to each other through mutations. Science isn't the problem. Science speaks clearly that God made man only a few thousand years ago. It is the interpretation of the scientific data that is the problem. I've talked about how men have put their beliefs ahead of the scriptural texts, and this is true in science itself. Men put their beliefs or their biases and beliefs into what is learned from their data as their research about our universe and planet. Looking at the data from a biblical perspective leads to very different conclusions. Usually scientists reject biblical understanding of creation because they reject God and reject that they are sinners. Evolution teaches that God isn't needed and that natural forces made everything around us. Evolution is wrong. God is actively overseeing his creation, and we are accountable to him. Specifically, we are accountable to him for our sins. Wisdom is God's first step of creation. Wisdom herself shows up in Proverbs 8 with a message of wisdom's importance. Finally, in verse 21, she begins to tell Solomon, the writer of the book of Proverbs, that she was created first before anything else. Wisdom then is foundational to all and everything that is made later, meaning that all that follows after wisdom is created is totally dependent on wisdom and totally dependent on God to exist. The order of creation is very important to understand, as each step sets the conditions for the next step. I will explain wisdom being foundational later in this particular lecture. I believe that with wisdom being the first finite or limited thing to be created, that time, as we know it, moving forward one moment at a time, click, 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 time was created. Time itself, before wisdom was created, when only God existed, is a mystery. But we can be pretty sure that time as we know it did come into existence early on in God's creation. Pagan thought about time is not biblical. I'll be doing a lecture on time here, and probably it's lecture 14, so in about 7 lectures I'll be doing that on time, where I'll be explaining this more extensively. The pagans, they teach that God existed in a timeless place. They teach that heaven is timeless. Biblical thinking and Jewish thinking is that time is a part of all of God's creation, that wisdom existed within time, that the spiritual realm exists within time, and that this physical realm obviously exists within time. Time moves forward in all of God's creation at the same exact pace. Paradise, as I like to call heaven paradise, and earth are existing time-wise together. This is seen in that both realms got an upgrade together at the cross and resurrection of Jesus. Paradise is an upgrade from Abraham's bosom, and Christianity is an upgrade from the Old Testament. We'll be looking into all of these things as we move forward, but that's kind of introductory. Be patient at this point about paradise and Abraham's bosom. It will be the focus of a future lecture. This does not mean that God is totally subject to time. God seems to be both within time as he enjoys events with us, but also outside of our time as he knows the future. I know this seems contradictory, but on the other hand, both are true. I tend to keep it simple in explaining that God submits to being within our time by explaining his being delighted with wisdom. Wisdom claims, a few verses from where we were a moment ago, that she delights God regularly in Proverbs 8:30. Just 8 verses from Proverbs 8:22. Delight contains the idea of surprise. Delight contains the idea of entertainment. Delight contains the idea that God and wisdom danced. Delight is impossible if God is totally outside of time, as nothing would surprise or entertain God if he was totally outside of time. That God is inside of time and outside of time makes sense if God is to be delighted and if God is to know the future. If both things are true, then it is that God has to be in time, enjoying things around us, with us, and also outside of time. Those are both true. They planned, God in wisdom planned. Let me go back. Both are biblical. Therefore, I propose that God is beyond time, but puts himself into our time so that he enjoys our events, our history with us. Now I'll move on. God in wisdom planned each detail of creation before anything else was made. Back to Proverbs 8, verse 30. It also tells us that wisdom was a master craftsman working with God. And I beside him as a master craftsman, I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, is what the verse says. I take this to mean that wisdom and God work together to plan and design all that is around us. They planned the details of the spiritual realm and how there was to be interplay between the physical and the spiritual. One combination of the spiritual and the physical is us, humans. We are both physical and spiritual creations. Many things needed to be decided, as it takes great plans to make the complexity of this physical realm. Think of it, we are living beings. That is complex. That takes planning, that takes design. I believe that the spiritual is the spark of life that is enjoyed on our planet. Without the spiritual realm, there isn't what we call life. There would be more of an existence there. Angels might disagree with the assessment, but I believe life is fuller and more complete than in paradise or than in heaven or in the spiritual. This physical realm has life. We have production. Anyway, scientists try to explain life on Earth as just happening magic, that we are a cosmic accident, that we just came into being by pure luck. But our complexity, our DNA proves them wrong. DNA is a very complex molecule that contains way too much information to just have come into existence by accident. We are the product of design. God made us. God is our creator. If you know anything about computers, I'll go a little off my prepared lecture here. It's a 1-byte system. It's an on and off switch kind of system, and that's all a computer is on off, on off. But a DNA molecule is a 4-binary system. In other words, on, off, on, off, off. I mean, it has 4 possibilities in each placement within the DNA, and that's why so much information can be stored in the DNA, and that's why only God could put all of that information within each of the cells of our body. The complexity that makes you who you are is all contained in a DNA molecule and all contained differently in each person here on the earth. So secondly, or the second step of creation, is the spiritual realm. There are 2 parts to this creation, as I will explain later. The second part of the spiritual realm is created after, I believe, after the physical realm, or at least I assume after the physical realm. I guess God in his wisdom could have made the physical realm second as a foundation to the spiritual realm, but somehow I don't believe this would work. Wisdom is foundational to the spiritual. The spiritual is foundational to the physical. This order of creation makes what exist. It makes what we enjoy in this physical realm, it makes it work. I will show this more to explain the soul, gravity, and atomic glue later in this lecture. You know that sons of God, or angels as they are more commonly called, watched the creation. We know that they watched the creation of the earth. There's an event in the book of Job where Satan and God are having a contest. The wager is about Job and his faithfulness. Satan claims that Job is only faithful to God because God continues to bless him, but God has confidence in Job's faithfulness. Satan wagers that Job will curse God if God removes his blessing from Job. God gives Satan permission, and Satan does what he always does if allowed. He takes all of Job's stuff from him. Job remains faithful. Satan arranges to change the deal and asks for permission to take Job's health from him. God agrees and allows Satan to do more of his dirty work. Job is left with nothing, and his health is attacked by the evil one. He still remains faithful. But Job challenges God to explain why he has been attacked. God doesn't explain. But instead of directly answering Job's concerns about his life, God challenges Job about creation. He asks Job all kinds of questions about what he knows about the details of creation. And Job is speechless in his stupidity about even the simplest of things. God is basically telling Job that an answer to his question is beyond him to know or to be able to understand, is outside of his ability to comprehend. But one of the things God brings up in his questioning with Job is from chapter 38, starting at verse 4. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth, Job? Tell me if you have understanding. Who undermined its or who determined its measurement? Surely you know. Or who stretches the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, that's talking about the stars that are around us, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Sons of God is another way of referring to angels. The angels watched creation, and they were excited. They were applauding. They were happy about what God was doing and what he was making. And they were watching with bated breath. They were watching all of it with great joy. And they shouted as creation was taking place. In fact, Psalms 104:5 says, you who laid the foundations of the earth, and I'm saying wisdom and the spiritual are foundations of our physical realm of this earth, so that it should not be moved forever. There are foundations to the earth, and I propose they are the spiritual and wisdom are foundational to all that exists here on this earth. The third part of creation that I enjoy is that we have our five senses. I wanted to also say that it's obvious that if the angels are here and they are rejoicing as they watch, then they had to be in existence before the physical. That's why I'm proposing that the spiritual has to be the second order of God's creation. So the spiritual realm and the angels, I think I did go past this, meaning that the spiritual realm and angels were living at this time earth was created, meaning that the spiritual realm was made before the physical realm, and specifically earth is said to be foundation, and I read those scriptures. The third part of creation is the physical, that we enjoy with all of our five senses. Our eyes and ears and nose and taste and touch are all tuned into this physical world. God made us to appreciate this realm to the full. This was his plan from the very beginning, to make a realm where physical life and reproduction would happen. We are the only realm with gender, and all living things here multiply. That's an exciting part, that I say this is the ultimate realm because of reproduction. I would say also, I know heaven is said to be beautiful, but I don't think it compares to the beauty that we enjoy here on earth. Another reason why I propose that evolution's impossible, because beauty has no function. Evolution only explains function scientifically, but creation explains beauty and explains that God really does have a plan for all that is around us, and he appreciates beautiful things, and therefore God created. We didn't come about magically. We are God's creation. And God did all of this for earth. He could have made just our solar system. We would have existed just fine within our solar system, but he made galaxy that we are contained within, and he made all the other galaxies around us and all the other trillions and trillions of stars that are around us. God made this physical realm huge to teach us how small we are. And I've talked about us being a speck on a speck on a speck on a speck on a speck. I don't need to do that again, but it's wonderful that we are God's ultimate creation. We are the ultimate realm. Angels are cool and a blessing as they do spiritual work on our behalf, but they don't reproduce. They were made and their numbers are fixed. Humans started as one couple, and now there are billions of us. I understand we're hitting the 8 billion mark here on this planet very shortly. This physical world is amazing, except for sin, death, and pain. remove those and we make the spiritual realm look very boring. Seriously, at the great challenges and conquests, all of them are here. All of the great love stories are here. All of the beauty, or at least most of it, is here in this physical realm, and particularly here on this earth. God made it that way. God made us for joy and abundance of life. God made us not only to rule this universe, but to rule angels. That's found in 1 Corinthians 6:3. Do you not know that we shall judge angels? How much more then that pertains to this life? We are the molding of and the unity of flesh and spirit, and we have a soul. I eventually want to do an entire lecture on just the soul, but that's going to be ways down the road. Let me explain again about the soul. It is a favorite subject. I have many favorite subjects, but this is definitely special. Science can't find your conscious mind inside your physical brain. Science cannot find where you make decisions in your physical brain. Science can't find your personality in your physical brain. Science can't explain what's beyond them, and that is our soul. That's the permanent part of us. That is an interweaving of our spirit with this physical body, that we are both spirit and we are flesh and blood, and we have a soul. We have the eternal part of us that will return to God eventually. We have spiritual things within us, and that is why we are alive. That's our spark of life, is from the soul. And our body, well, right now we're a body with the soul, and eventually in the future, as I'll explain in other lectures, will be a soul with a body. That will be exciting. That will be a joyous time when we finally get to enjoy heaven, get to enjoy the spiritual in the same way that we enjoy the physical. And that's the promise that the scripture gives us about this future. That's your soul. That's the permanent part of you. That's the eternal part of you. That's, as I said, the spiritual part. It is connected to your physical brain for memories. Already at this point, we are ahead of spirits or demons that do not have a brain, a physical brain. We have that. We're already ahead of them. God gave us a gift in life and a soul and a powerful physical brain. We further connect the spiritual to the physical. Gravity, what is it? Seems to be like time. We can't see it or take it apart or analyze it. You can't feel it, except you know it is holding you on this planet. You know gravity is holding the earth in its orbit around the sun. Why do things with mass, why do things that have substance or thing, and therefore they physically attract to each other? We understand the purpose of gravity is it keeps everything from flying apart. But like the soul, it's a mystery to all of us. Like time, it's a mystery to us. Like atomic glue, my next subject, is a mystery to us. I propose the mystery is solved in the spiritual realm. That's foundational to this physical realm. And therefore, these things have their mystery explained to us so that we can understand better in the spiritual realm. When we have those spiritual bodies that we're going to get at some point in time, I think God's going to allow us to explore the spiritual. Atomic blue, what is that, you might ask? It's the mystery of the nucleus or core of the atom. Positive protons in different numbers make all the elements we have in this physical realm. But the mystery is how they hold together. Positive protons should be expelled from the core of the atom. Positive attracts to negative, like in a magnet. It takes powerful force to hold two positive ends of a magnet together. Yet in the core of an atom, positive protons stay together with some unknown force. This force is just called atomic glue. It's a mystery how the protons in the trillions of atoms just in the area around you hold together. The Bible says that Jesus holds all things together in Colossians 1:17, which says, He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. This could explain gravity and atomic glue. This is the plan of God, with wisdom as its beginning point, the spiritual being created second, and the physical being created last. That all of these things were necessary for life, for mass, for atoms, for DNA, atomic glue, our soul, how we are designed as God's ultimate creation on earth. Humans are God's ultimate creation. How all of that was designed was because God knew that this was the only way for it all to hold together, for it all to work, and for life and existence to happen within this physical realm. Think about it, though. It's pretty marvelous. What a miracle. We're actually living dirt, We're actually living dust. We are alive and well, and God made material things take on life and vitality, and we can think for ourselves, and we can plan for ourselves, and we have personality, and all of those things. It's an amazing creation that God has made. The design of our planet alone is amazing. Earth is the right size as gravity is perfect here. It's the right distance from the sun, which, by the way, is also exactly the right size needed for a stable star. The moon is not only the right size to cause tides, which cleans up the ocean, it's also the right exact distance from us. Jupiter and Saturn are large enough as planets in our solar system to sweep our solar system and protect us from 99% of debris in our solar system. Jupiter and Saturn are positioned where they need to be to protect Earth from most asteroids. Oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide are all in the perfect balance for life to exist here. Plants are designed to use carbon dioxide and convert it to oxygen. Animals convert oxygen to carbon dioxide. It's all perfect, like it should be, because God designed it that way. The pastor put it this way: it is as if there are hundreds of dials that perfectly balance life on our planet. If one dial is off, life doesn't exist here. But these situations are all dialed in, are all perfectly where they need to be, exactly where they need to be for life to exist here. In the case of our designed place of residence here on this earth, it's perfectly, exactly what God intended for it to be. Hell is the fourth step of creation. I know this is new to you, so I'll just show you where I get that from. It's Matthew 25:41 that says, "Then he will say to those on his left, 'Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the everlasting eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels.'" Hell was originally designed, or at this translation says, prepared for evil spiritual beings. My thinking is that this was done before the fall of Adam and Eve, but after the fall of Satan. His pride got the better of him, and Revelations 12:4 seemingly tells us the amount of angels that fell from Satan. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. 2/3 of the angelic host stayed faithful to God. 1/3 followed Satan. This is good news that the demons are already outnumbered 2-1. Hell is God's fourth and final act of creation because Jesus specifically tells us it was prepared or made for the demons. This is why I think it was made before humans fell. Also, it contains a hint that God was not expecting, or at least he was hoping, that Adam and Eve wouldn't fail. Hell, by the way, is the temporary holding place for evil souls, be they demons or human souls. Revelations 20:14 tells us the permanent place. Then death and Hades, or hell, was thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death. The lake of fire is that permanent place because hell will reside within the lake of fire. So the lake of fire is the permanent place for evil souls that have rejected Jesus as their Lord and Savior. Hell is really the second part, or the second half of creation of the spiritual realm, because hell has to be spiritual, because spiritual beings exist or will live there. To be clear that even though hell was not specifically designed for human souls, it's where human souls who've rejected Jesus go after death. I'm winding this lecture down. The proof of the differences between wisdom, the spiritual, and the physical is how each responds to sin. As each part of creation is made, each one seems to be less resistant to sin, or they resist sin differently from each other. Wisdom has remained pure according to James 3:17. The angels, when they sinned, only defiled themselves, so the spiritual doesn't multiply sin. But when Adam and Eve sinned, it spread in this physical realm like wildfire. The spiritual realm does multiply sin, and that is the bad news. But on the other hand, this physical realm also multiplies all that is received from God, all that's received from wisdom, and all that's received from the spiritual realm. Evil multiplies and has tainted everything, but good, as it comes into our realm, also multiplies and changes everything for the better. God is at work in our world, and yes, evil and goodness exist together here and coexist here, and it's difficult to see how dark and light can both exist, but they do in this spiritual sense. About God is continuing to warm our planet and continuing to warm us. Back to my earlier statements about wisdom, the spiritual and the physical resisting sin differently. God is holy, wisdom is holy, 99% of the spiritual realm is holy, only hell and this realm are tainted by sin. In this physical realm, good and evil exist here at the same time. Human souls get to decide to submit to God or to submit to Satan. I said tainted by sin because there is still good or very good in the function of the bodies of evil people. Life is good. DNA is the life of an evil person is still good even though they do evil things. There remains something good no matter how evil they become. Even Satan still exists or is alive and has function in his system that was originally designed by God. I know I get myself into trouble here, but it is a point to consider that sin does destroy, but in the process there remains something of God's good or very good creation. Most theologians do not agree with me and use the phrase total depravity and quote verses like Romans 3:10, as it is written, there is no one righteous, not even one. Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And Mark 10:18, Luke 18:19, and Jesus said to them, why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. And Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. who can understand it? I could go on, but I think you get their point. My point is that sin and evil created nothing, sustains nothing, and have no gain in sin and evil. Therefore, sin can only taint that which was created good. Sin is temporary. Sin does end. Eventually, all those tainted by sin, that tainting can be permanent if not forgiven, will be disposed of in the lake of fire. Because when we say that the day sin and evil end will be a glorious, triumphant day, earth will finally be healed. The universe will no longer decay, and life will swallow death in victory. Trying to explain that pure evil doesn't exist is almost useless. Satan sure seems like pure evil. Hitler and others seem like pure evil, but both prove my point. Satan still does good things to try to trick us. His motive is evil, but he still can be an angel of light, according to 2 Corinthians 11:14. And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. Hitler loved his mistress. Even in his depravity, he had a heart that could care for another human being. He failed her miserably, but even criminals have a code of conduct. Even pirates had a code of conduct. Most hardened sinners say that certain behaviors are beneath them. Nothing or no one can be pure evil, as they were once created for good. One other point, time itself was placed within creation. By that I mean that all of creation began at a point in time that is already functioning. Adam and Eve were adults when they were made. Stars were made with their light being seen here, even though they are millions of light years away. Rivers were flowing with water that had not fallen from the sky or fallen in rain the day before. Trees were designed with function already happening, with sap in their branches. Everything was made functioning perfectly. Everything was designed to work properly from the very get-go. You cut down a tree in the garden the day after it was made, it would have had rings for years of growth. Again, a lot of time is put into creation for everything to function properly right away. Remember, there was fruit on the tree when the trees were made. This is a bit tricky, but life begets life. God created everything with the life in it. Therefore, Adam and Eve had grandparents who never existed. Adam and Eve's life was given to them at creation. They were adults the day of creation and could talk and walk and think the moment they were created. So creation took 6 literal days for God to make, but within his creation there's a great amount of time. This is why science has a hard time with atomic dating. Everything was made old. Everything around had age built into them. They can claim it is millions of years old, but it was just made a few thousand years ago. An illustration. Science has the problem of deciding how long the candle on a table has been lit, and how tall was that candle when it was first lit. They are into the process of trying to find out when this earth began after creation, but time itself is not on their side. They don't know what the percentage of elements was in the rock when it was created by God. Saying it was 0 or this or that is a huge assumption, and they can't possibly know because they are not God. Let me close. God bless you for your patience with me. God bless you for listening to my best attempts at teaching you something, and God bless you as you do your part to make our world a better place. In Jesus' name, just continue to grow and learn. Continue to grow to be wiser and wiser, and continue to gain all that you can, because you are a child of the King. God bless you. God bless you very much. Bye-bye.